The road bends slowly beneath Pendle Hill, as though it remembers something it cannot quite forget. Even now, 413 years, 11 months and 24 days later, the air feels heavy. Not colder, not darker, just like you are being watched. April the 10th, 1612, and a day that was meant for remembrance, for silence. But for some, it also meant a gathering. Somewhere beyond these fields, another kind of gathering was beginning. This time not in a church, not beneath stained glass or candlelight, but in a place not marked on any map, Malkin Tower. Now today is April the 3rd, 2026. It's a Good Friday, and we thought we'd come here to Barley to retell the story of a famous or infamous gathering that took place, as I touched upon right at the very start, over 413 years ago. And this gathering would lead to one of the most well-documented and the most infamous of all witch trials. And it took place here, just on the outskirts of a small village called Barley. This gathering, many people turned up at a place known as Malkin Tower. But what was Malkin Tower? Who lived there? But more importantly, what was this gathering, this meeting, all about? Now, there is a problem when it comes to the gathering and the meeting that took place at Malkin Tower. Because we are told it happened, we are told who was there, we're also told what it was meant to represent. But some of the stories we are told, they come from voices shaped by fear. And fear has this strange habit of filling in the darkest places. They came one by one, no grand procession, no ceremony, just footsteps in the mud, soft, uncertain, as if each person wasn't entirely sure they should be there at all. And while church bells tolled across Lancashire, calling the faithful to kneel, a different kind of congregation was forming, hidden from sight, yet destined to be remembered for centuries. They came from Newchurch in Pendle, from the nearby village of Roughly. They also came from the many farms that were scattered within the shadows of Pendle Hill. Perhaps they were drawn by something dark, something mysterious, but certainly many people made their way to Malkin Tower. There were many, many other names that would soon matter, and these names will be forever etched in history. These were people already being whispered about. They were already marked. People who lived at the very edge of survival, where hunger becomes louder than reason, and reputation can be as deadly as the truth. Now inside, if there was ever an inside, a low fire may probably have been lit. Food that had been stolen from a nearby farm had already been slaughtered and prepared to eat. These poor people They all gathered around the table. They were there in a celebratory mood, or were they? Were they perhaps plotting something far more sinister and far more devil-like in nature? We're going to get into this. Now let's just take a moment to pause, because this is where the story of the gathering splits. One version tells us that this was no ordinary meeting, that food was laid out, not shared, but taken, a sheep stolen from a nearby farmer's field, slaughtered and prepared, that words were spoken, not in worry, but in conspiracy. A plan, they said, had been hatched to blow up the walls of Lancaster Castle, to free those incarcerated within those stone-cold walls. It was also said that this gathering took place to strike back at the very people who had accused them. But accused them of what? And all this took place on Good Friday, of all days. This wasn't just unlawful, but it was unholy. But there is another version, quieter, less convenient. There was a small group of people who lived off the land. They were extremely poor. They had simply met to talk, to eat the limited amount of food that they had. One story that seems to be written about the most is that a sheep was stolen from the farm or the field of a nearby farmer, and that was sacrificed, obviously, to be prepared for their Good Friday meal. But the accusations had started far sooner than this, and it was a peddler that was struck down who suffered what we would class today as an heart attack on one of the lanes, such as maybe the one we're walking on now. And it was Alison Device that apparently had cursed this peddler. And this peddler was named John Law. Alison had asked or begged for some pins, and John Law refused to give them to her. So she struck him down with a curse of sorts. A black dog appeared from nowhere, and this is when John Law himself suffered this stroke. We're not going to get into too much about that story. We do have a separate video on that, which I'll put links down below. But in a roundabout way, it was that, it's that scene, it is that moment in time between John Law and Alison Device which kick-started everything that was about to happen.
In the chapel made of shadow, where the candles burn too low, I heard a whisper from the altar, from a place I should not go. Stained glass saints were watching, but their eyes had turned to stone. In the silence and the darkness, said I never walk alone. I felt the cold beneath the prayer, a hand reached from the night.
These poor people came to talk, perhaps to worry, to ask the same question that must have hung over every single one of them. Who will they come for next? Because at this point, accusations had already begun. A peddler had been struck down, and a confession had been pulled simply from fear. And at the centre of all this was the young girl, Alison Device, granddaughter of old Demdike. Further names are spoken, and perhaps too quickly. And once a name is spoken, it doesn't disappear, it spreads. Now let's not imagine Malkin Tower as being some sort of coven. It was simply a group of people that came together, realising, feeling, having that gut instinct that something bad was coming their way. Every glance was lauded, every whisper was dangerous, and trust was already beginning to fracture, because when survival is at stake, even family members become uncertain. And somewhere in that room was a child, Jeanette Device, 9 years old. She was watching, she was also listening. She was perhaps understanding more than anyone else had realised. Young Jeanette, she was watching, she was listening on. Perhaps she was being made to listen. We will never know, of course. But most certainly, in the weeks that would quickly come around, this little girl would stand in a courtroom filled with people so eager to damn all these witnesses, all these people who took place at the gathering at Malkin Tower. They wanted to persecute them. And this persecution came in the way of witchcraft. The famous witch trials of 1612 are perhaps, along with the Salem witch trials, the most written about in the centuries that have since gone. We're talking over 400 years since all this took place in and around these areas. We're currently walking through one of the forests here in Pendle, following the Pendle Sculpture Trail to retell the story of the gathering. And many believe that Malkin Tower itself once stood very close to where we are filming this video today. Malkin Tower itself, over the years, over the centuries, many people have tried to pinpoint the exact location of where it once stood. Many historians and many scholars simply believe that Malkin Tower was never a tower. It was simply an old, kind of ruined farmhouse. It may have been in a decrepit state, but what I think many people can agree on is it was never a tower. The tower itself kind of gave it a grandeur. It kind of gives it a name and importance, when in reality it was more likely an old farmhouse. And after the famous witch trials took place, and obviously the condemned were executed up on Gallows Hill, we will put a link down below to another video regarding that story. Some people believe that the farmhouse, Malkin Tower itself, was destroyed. It was destroyed by the authorities so people would not come and visit that area. Now, where this story took place, Malkin Tower, it would ignite the most infamous of all witch trials that the world has ever seen. The infamous witch trials of Pendle in 1612. It was whilst facing persecution and prosecution within the court that Jeanette spoke, and she would speak clearly and coldly, as though she was recalling something simple, a gathering, a meeting of witches. She would describe the fire, the people, the real purpose, and then she would begin to name them one by one. First her mother, then her brother, then her sisters. Each word became a quiet, irreversible step toward the gallows. And her story would fit a narrative. It fit the fear and the expectations at that moment in time back in the year 1612. It fit the shape of something people already believed was true. And that is the most dangerous kind of story, the one that feels right, even if it isn't. And yet, for its significance, Malkin Tower itself remains a mystery. We speak of it as if it was fixed, stone and timber, rooted in the earth beneath Pendle Hill, a place you could point to, stand within, even touch. But the truth is far less certain. No maps mark it, no foundations have ever been definitely proven. No single location can be agreed upon. And for centuries, historians and local scholars have searched the slopes of Pendle, each proposing their own theory. some placing it near modern-day Blackall, others closer to Newchurch in Pendle, some suggesting it was never a tower at all, and perhaps that's what makes this all the more unsettling, because the most infamous gathering in the history of the Pendle witch trials took place somewhere we can no longer truly find, somewhere swallowed by the landscape, by weather, by centuries of silence. You can walk in the fields today, stand beneath the same skies, feel the same wind rolling down from Pendle Hill, and still not know if you are standing metres away from it or miles. But maybe, just maybe, that uncertainty is fitting, because Malkin Tower, as we say, wasn't just a place. It was a moment, a convergence, a spark in the dark. It was a gathering.